The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I'm the Director of Advocacy here at Children's Health Defense. We got a killer doubleheader for you today. No mandates for everyone, for anyone, without exception. We'll have Leslie Manukian and Dr. Kat Lindley joining us to discuss the new coalition around the Medical Freedom Act. But first, before that, HHS to study cell phone health risks. We're going to have Attorney Scott McCollough on and Risa Evans to discuss what is happening with cell phones, with EMR radiation, and with the FCC, what is happening with new rules that are critical, could destroy all the advocacy work that Children's Health Defense and so many other groups have done to maintain some local control on where these radiation emitting towers actually can be placed up. So we got a great hour. Don't leave for any of it. But first, as always, we have some news. Children's Health Defense has joined the coalition for the Medical Freedom Act to end vaccines and medical mandates. This is a group spearheaded by Stands for Health Freedom and Health Freedom Defense Fund, and it was born out of the work of Leslie Manukian, who was able to get the Idaho Medical Freedom Act passed in Idaho, which banned just about all medical mandates. Well, now a group of more than a dozen, it's somewhere like 14, 15 groups, are getting on board to make this a reality in more states. Stay tuned. I have Leslie Manukian and Dr. Kat Lindley to come on to discuss that further. But we have the other states, the states where there kind of is no medical freedom. And what are those states doing? About 19 states are joining a growing chorus to reject the new childhood vaccine schedule that has come from HHS and CDC under the leadership and vision of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. There's states like New Jersey, California, Massachusetts, New York are all coming up, at least with rhetoric about doing this. Some states have already passed laws saying they now follow the AAP guidelines and not CDC or ACIP guidelines. Kathy Hochul in New York had announced that they're doing the same thing in New York. Well, my friend John Gilmore released an action alert at Autism Action Network saying we need to call Governor Hochul as she declares war on Kennedy's vaccine reforms. That action went out last week in New York, and while the action was live, the phones got jammed up at Kathy Hochul's office. It said try back in 90 minutes, then try back tomorrow. So we rang the phones off the hook, and it's an election year here in New York. So this is going to be very, very interesting to watch and to see what is going to happen with this. It's almost like two different worlds: a Medical Freedom Act, end all medical mandates, and then these like 20 states clinging on to an old dying model. Of interest, I think I just skipped this though, but Health Action Massachusetts has put out some guidance here with recent changes to both the federal and state levels. It's understandable that Massachusetts parents have questions about school vaccine requirements. That's why we're starting a multi-part series to clearly explain what has changed, what hasn't, and what families need to know. Overall, in Massachusetts, the schedule remains the same. They did pass a new bill at lightning speed that said we don't follow the federal government, we follow the AAP now. Oh, but big question about that. What about liability? Liability only comes for routinely recommended vaccines at the federal level. I wonder what's going to happen there. I think I smell lawsuits brewing. Could happen all across the country in the months ahead. Everybody's talking about it. No one's exactly sure where it's going to land. In New York City, a lot of you know I'm a fired, unvaccinated teacher. Got fired for declining the COVID shot. There's tons of lawsuits still going on. January 22nd, this Thursday at 8 p.m., If you want to know about the lawsuits for fired unvaccinated NYC workers, as well as a reinstatement process that was bait and switched on us just a month ago, it was a terrible thing. Join this Zoom call. You could go to teachersforchoice.org. The link to register for this Zoom is there. Attorney Sujata Gibson and Christina Martinez will be on to talk about all the developments that are going on, including a couple of victories for unvaccinated workers in the courts in New York City. And what's next? What can happen to you if you were fired? What is possible? There was a true bait and switch pulled on us. They said we could be reinstated without signing a legal waiver in New York City. But then Mayor Adams never followed through with that. And now we have a new mayor, Mayor Mamdani. We've been making noise about this, the fired worker community in New York City. Former veteran New York Post reporter, Susan Edelman, actually put out a tweet on this because she's following this and says neither NYC DCAS or NYC Mayor's Office will explain what happened to the right to return for unvaxxed city employees promised by ex-Mayor Adams. Repeated inquiries are ignored. We are still awaiting answers. Then Joanne Ariola, councilwoman who's been our biggest supporter, said, we have been contacting the current administration for guidance on how to get our unvaccinated city employees back to work. The previous administration for Eric Adams pulled a cruel, not surprised, move on the members he swore to reinstate. Please, NYC Mayor, right this wrong. Let's get our unvaccinated workers back to work, tagging NYC DCAS, Bravest for Choice, Teachers for Choice, an organization I founded. NYC DCAS, just think of them as the HR for New York City. They, pull the levers and make these things happen. This stalled at one simple vote. Now, a dear friend of mine named Amy from Firsthand Media asked this question squarely to the new mayor, Mayor Mamdani, on workers' reinstatement. And she laid out an excellent question, and Mayor Mamdani gave a very brief answer. Let's show this clip.
Hi, Amy, Firsthand Media. I have a question. Hi, I have a question related to labor for you. Just after you were elected, the Adams administration offered reinstatement to city workers who lost their jobs under the 2021 vaccine mandates. That process has apparently not moved forward. There are numerous workers who met the December 5th deadline to request reinstatement who are reporting that they've heard nothing from the city since then. And there's a rule change required for some of those reinstatements that has not been sent from DCAS or your office up to the Civil Service Commission for approval. So my question for you is, will your administration, given your support for labor and workers, be expediting that process and letting those workers know when they can expect to move forward with reinstatements? And will you be expediting the rule change being sent to the Civil Service Commission for approval?
I appreciate you flagging this issue. This is something that we'll follow up on.
All right, we've got time for probably one more. Go ahead.
Thank you for flagging this. This is something we'll follow up on. We need to keep the pressure up. That's what they respond to, is pressure, cameras in their face, all of these things. Shout out to Amy at Firsthand Media. Follow Firsthand Media on Substack. The best independent reporter out there for fired, unvaccinated NYC workers. Firsthand Media on X, on Substack. Definitely follow her. Just, it's amazing how bad the mainstream just drops the ball. God bless Amy and everybody that does work like her. One last news item, and then we're going to bring on our first guest. The Donald J. Trump Republican Club in Brooklyn is honoring some medical freedom folks. And I am honored to say I am one of those folks. They're going to be honoring me for the work that I've done on behalf of fired unvaccinated workers, on behalf of the unvaccinated here in New York and New York City, as well as John Gilmore, the founder of Autism Action Network. You can find out more about that at djtnyc.com. This is going to be happening on January 31st, I believe the date is. Tickets are available. We'd love for you to come. Children's Health Defense does not support nor oppose any candidate for office, does not support nor oppose any political party, but we do appreciate and talk to those who value and fight for medical freedom. So thank you to the DJT Republican Club in Kings County in Brooklyn, New York. And with that, We're going to go into our first segment here. I'm going to bring on attorney Scott McCollough and attorney Risa Evans. Thank you both so much for joining us this morning. It's great to have you. And last week, we're seeing headlines that HHS is going to be studying cell phone health risks. And also, apparently, the FDA has quietly taken off some of the safety claims that they have originally had up about how cell phones are, as safe as absolutely anything. There's no problem. Put them up to your head, put them up to your kid's head. Nothing to see here. So this is extremely interesting coming from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his HHS. Scott, why don't you talk to us about this a little bit?
The federal government, including HHS, many other agencies, have for a very long time tried to hide from the American public the significant health and environmental risks from electromagnetic radiation. The military knows about it. They've known about it for decades. But for the general population, the citizens of the United States, we've been told by our government for years and years that there's just no problem here. You can't get hurt from EMR unless it burns your skin. And that's just plain wrong. We know that is wrong. The science is clear that that's wrong. And so it is a significant development that HHS has now announced that it's going to take a look at all of this again. Specifically, what they are going to do is follow some of the recommendations from the National Academy of Sciences from way back in 2008. Even though we know that this stuff can be harmful, there's still some gaps in knowledge. Some epidemiology needs to be conducted. We need to understand why EMR affects adults and children differently. I mean, we kind of have an idea. Children have smaller brains. They're still in development. But there are some specifics that still need to be known. The problem that we have right now, speaking of mandates, is that everybody in this country is living under an exposure mandate to EMR. And we're living in a giant experiment. But at the same time, it's difficult to do something like epidemiology because we don't have an unexposed control group. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to kind of really nail down the mechanisms of harm and figure out what can be done in order to minimize the risk while still allowing people to have their cell phone. It's really an extraordinary development. We've been hoping that they would do this for over a year now, and we're really, really glad to hear this announcement.
Yeah, I'm very glad as well, too. This topic was trending on X last week after Secretary Kennedy made this announcement. Actually, Lou, I think we have a clip. I think we have a brief clip of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. speaking to his understanding of the dangers that cell phone radiation, EMF in general, pose. Let's show that clip.
Towers, do you think?
I'm very concerned about it.
So like 9, 10?
Calling it 5G is actually a misnomer because that doesn't have to do with 5G does not tell you what's wrong with EMFs. EMFs are bad depending on the pulse rates and the wavelengths, and some of them are very bad. And in Europe, the regulations are an order of magnitude lower than what we allow here. Mm-hmm. But there are literally over 10,000 studies that document a number of ill effects, including cancer, tumor growth.
So there, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. saying there are thousands upon thousands of studies, but to be clear, I don't believe he was saying specifically about cell phone radiation. I think he was talking about EMFs, EMR situations in general. Scott, why don't you clarify that and give us your perspective?
Yes. When you get to those kind of numbers, it's really not just about cell phones or cell towers. Right. It's more about EMR in general, including, by the way, high-powered electric transmission lines, which also emit electromagnetic radiation. What he was speaking generally is the fact that electromagnetic radiation itself is known to be biologically active. And at certain levels of exposure, bad things start to happen, whether it be cancer, whether it be any number of other diseases, neurological, other. It causes people to have sleep difficulties. And a lot of times people just don't understand why it is they feel so terrible all the time. But yes, his number is solid. You just have to understand the context of it.
Well, so, and then going wider than just cell phones, one of the big ones nowadays, and we all see them going up. We see them in our neighborhoods. We see them by schools. We see them in empty parking lots. We see them in spots that we shouldn't be, are the cell towers, the EMR cell towers that are going up absolutely everywhere. And there are some major concerns about these towers. As a matter of fact, the FCC has just closed out a window period of accepting comments to rule changes that they are trying to make right now that could be the most dramatic changes in the space of EMR, in the space of cell tower installation that we have ever seen. Scott, talk to us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, back in September, the commission released this notice of proposed rulemaking. The comment cycle has closed. It closed last week. People can still write in, but the formal comment cycle has closed. The commission is basically proposing to eliminate all local control. And, cell towers, obviously, they do present all these terrible health risks, but there's other problems too. I mean, let's face it, they're ugly. Nobody wants one in their front or backyard. They should not be near homes or schools. And under the law as it is, local jurisdictions, when they're looking at getting looking at a zoning permit application, have the ability to decide where a facility should go. Maybe not in front of somebody's home, maybe down the street at an intersection, maybe in a commercial district nearby. They can decide what it looks like, how tall it is. They can impose other conditions. And the FCC now is basically proposing just to wipe that all away. Local permitting will be a rubber stamp exercise. The application comes in, it gets stamped approved, the facility gets built. Oftentimes people won't even know that it's been proposed and approved until construction workers show up in their front yard tearing up dirt. So it's really a bad thing. And, obviously we are worried about the aesthetics and the impact on people just from having these facilities nearby. But the bigger problem is that the FCC is proposing to rush forward, clear the way, these barriers to deployment, without ever doing what it was told to do in 2021 by the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, which is take a look at its exposure guideline. It is going to rush ahead, put all these facilities in, probably try to grandfather them in, so that if and when standards are ultimately changed, as they must be, then everything will be grandfathered, and there's really not going to be anything people can do about the stuff that's out there already. It would only be prospective.
This is so incredibly important because at Children's Health Defense, maybe 99% of the activism that our EMR department has done has been around activating local activists, utilizing local control. The little bit they have, there's other, I would argue there isn't enough local control right now. But Risa, you're a staff attorney with Children's Health Defense. You have worked with activists throughout the country on these projects. Tell us, what are some of the successes? We have some major successes, and also tell us what would happen to these efforts if these FCC guidelines are changed.
Well, it will really, if the guidelines are changed to do what the FCC is trying to do, which is basically to become a sort of a federal zoning board for the placement of wireless facilities with local zoning and planning boards, just as Scott said, sort of in the position of rubber stamping, whatever is proposed. then there really is no more opportunity for local activism, because all of the laws that currently make local activism possible just go away. I mean, currently we're able to use some, local zoning requirements for, say, conditional use permits that involve a host of considerations about the impacts of a project on local properties. Those are laws that we're able to use to push back against projects and get them maybe to be some proposed facility to be deployed somewhere other than, on a hill on that overlooking a neighborhood, as was the case in a community that we worked with in Alaska. So if the NPRM sort of agenda comes to pass, then none of this will be possible. And I think it's for this reason that, the pushback and the response from local communities to this NPRM has been a nationwide, full-throated opposition to what the FCC is trying to do. And part of what we did was CHD submitted initial comments for these proposals, as well as reply comments, and we reviewed all of the comments that were submitted, and all of the comments that were not from industry, or a few industry insiders and supporters, were opposed to what the FCC is trying to do. Both the individual comments and the comments from local governments and local government organizations, and so there is a lot of pushback. The local government commenters really talked about the effects on local democracy that these rules would have, the effects on safety if communities are required to rubber stamp permits for proposed facilities. There will be negative impacts on property values, on community character. And, of course, even local officials who are currently not able to think about the health and environmental effects of wireless radiation because of the Telecommunications Act, they're also urging the FCC to do exactly what Scott was talking about a few minutes ago, which is to finally comply with the DC Court of Appeals order that it revisit its exposure guidelines to, really to bring them in line with what we currently know about the dangers posed by this technology. So,
Risa,
yeah.
Risa, could you just go over briefly some of the victories that you've been a part of, that the EMR department in CHD has been a part of, especially regarding towers, and what has happened with them throughout the country? If you could just give a few examples of what the work and what those who donate and support us, where their money has gone to into having an impact at the local level.
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Scott, this question, because he has been even more involved than I have in this. I have assisted with some of these victories, but he's really led the charge on them. So I'm going to let him take this one.
Great.
We started, our first case was in Malibu, California. We started there helping them to draft a more protective ordinance, and then we've been involved in a series of cases there when permit applications have come in under the new ordinance. And we've been pretty successful in Malibu. Virtually every site that we have opposed has not yet been approved. I can't say it's been denied, but it has not yet been approved. We've stopped them for over 3 years now. Now, in Malibu, they are putting in facilities in commercial areas and up and down Pacific Coast Highway. But so far, they're really not putting stuff in the residential areas or by schools. And so that's a significant victory. We also were involved in Douglas, Nevada. We split that one 50-50. There were 2 proposals there. One got denied because of our advocacy. The other one was approved over our objection. That's now in the state court on appeal. As Risa mentioned, we stopped a tower in Sitka, Alaska. We've been involved in New Jersey, where Verizon is proposing basically to line the Jersey shores with small cells up and down the boardwalk from one end of the state to the other on the Atlantic coast. And in those cases where we've been involved, we were either able to stop the proposal at the community level, There are 2 federal court cases in New Jersey right now. We've been involved in that and are helping the local governments there defend their denial. And to date, so far, we've been fairly successful in not losing. Let me just put it that way. So the message here is there are things you can do if you get involved at the local level early on under the current law. And frankly, I think that I and the EMR team and some of the other folks out in the country that are doing the same thing, because there are other people who are doing organized resistance, and they're fairly effective too. We're actually winning at the local level. We're winning. And so I think the FCC's proposal here to take away local control is a response to the fact that we're actually getting traction at the local level, and they just want to take that away.
Right, 100%. Even what could be viewed by some as even minor victories, they won't tolerate. just like a handful of cell towers not in the exact location they wanted. It's like too much for them to bear. They got to take away all of our freedoms. It is just it is just really insane. Everybody, stay tuned to CHD TV. Stay tuned to The Defender, children'shealthdefense.org, to follow everything that's happening. I predict January, February, March are going to be some of the most important months in the history of EMR advocacy. I think you're going to see some amazing things happening. They could be good things. They could be bad. It all depends on you. It all depends on how involved you're going to get and how engaged you're going to be in this entire process. We're 704nomore.org. Yes, definitely check that out. That is a hub for all of the various resources and activism that is going on around this issue. And actually, we're out of time for the segment, but Scott or Risa, what do you think right now as these FCC guidelines are looming, as a vote is happening? The FCC feels, DC feels so nameless and faceless, but the FCC really feels nameless and faceless and far away from us. But what would you suggest? The comment period's closed. What would you suggest could be done now by your average person who's watching this and wants to take action right now?
Well, like I said, the formal comment period is closed.
Right.
But you can still file either formal or informal statements for the record. And we've got a series of instructions in those sites that you just mentioned on how people can tell the FCC what they think. One of the most effective things, the FCC may not listen to it, but it's important to get it in a record. If you've got a personal story, if you've been injured by something, or if a cell tower went up right near you and you discovered all of a sudden your insurance went up, your property values went down, if you've been injured, you should put that in the record. Tell the FCC. And if we have to challenge an FCC decision, we will be able to use that as evidence before the court to try to challenge what the commission seems pretty intent on doing.
Very good. All right. Attorney Scott McCollough, Risa Evans, thank you both so much for coming here. I know you're going to be on again soon to go into more updates on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Now, don't go anywhere. We have another amazing segment to discuss the Medical Freedom Act coalition that has just formed. I am honored to have the president of Health Freedom Defense Fund and my friend, Leslie Manoukian, on, as well as Dr. Kat Lindley, who is with the IMA, organization of medical professionals who have also signed on to this new coalition, and Children's Health Defense has signed on to this coalition as well too. Leslie and Dr. Lindley, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you today.
So great to be with you, Michael. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Leslie, it's bright and early over there in Idaho. Thanks for getting up early and for being here with us. But most of my audience knows what happened in Idaho, oh my God, last year, but maybe not everybody does. Talk about the Idaho Medical Freedom Act, your leadership on that, and what happened before we talk about this new endeavor.
Yeah, well, this is the whole reason behind the Medical Freedom Act Coalition, is that I've been involved with health freedom issues for more than 20 years. Your viewers will probably know that I was the person behind The Greater Good, the award-winning vaccine documentary that came out in 2011. And making that film just impressed upon me the imperative of health freedom for all, because once you've been, I'm personally vaccine injured, and once that's happened to you, you want to protect those around you. And I have family members who are vaccine injured as well. And it really helped me to understand that we must protect this most sacred of our rights, because I don't think there's anything more sacred and there's anything more fundamental than the right to decide what we put into our bodies. Like, we come into this world naked, right? With only one possession, and that's our being, our physical body. And so when COVID happened, I knew what was going on. I decided that I was going to start fighting back. So I founded Health Freedom Defense Fund. But then after I watched the fallout and watched how people woke up during 2021, 2022, 2023, and then I watched in Idaho as they passed something called the Coronavirus Stop Act. It was a bill to ban COVID shot mandates in the state of Idaho. And I thought to myself, well, if they can do that, then they can do it all. And so I took that as a model and I wrote a bill called the Idaho Medical Freedom Act, which bans mandates of all medical interventions for almost all Idahoans. And we were so fortunate to have it passed. After the governor vetoed it once, we ended up winning, and he ended up signing it after both chambers of the Idaho legislature brought it back. And basically it outlaws the mandate of any kind of medical intervention, meaning a cream, a pill, an injection, a mask, a device, a test, anything that's being forced upon you for some medical reason, a monitor, a chip, anything like that is now banned in the state of Idaho for almost all. That was the impetus behind the medical bill. And then once that was passed, all these different organizations started coming up to me in the last 6 to 8 months of 2025 saying, we want to work with you, we want to work with you. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is literally a God-given moment for us to coalesce and flex our collective muscles the way the other side has been doing to us for decades. Because those of us who've been doing this for a long time will remember that there were leaked documents about 15 years ago from the pharmaceutical industry and all of their stakeholders, vested interests, where there were like 100 people on this list, and they were all collaborating with their messaging, with their targeting of individuals. Whenever something came out that undermined public confidence in vaccinations, they would attack in unison. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to use this opportunity to try and bring everybody together so that we can actually flex our collective muscles. And so we founded the coalition, and we're going to be introducing the bill in many, many states.
So now this is fantastic. So this coalition was started by Health Freedom Defense Fund and Stands for Health Freedom, the two just sister organizations of children's health defense. But you have many, many, many more groups on. Why don't you just give us a list of however many you can remember of the groups that are on? Give us some of those names and around how many groups are now a part of this coalition.
Sure. So as you mentioned, the Independent Medical Alliance, which used to be FLCCC. C, did I get all the C's, Kat?
3 C's, yes.
Yes. They've just done amazing work. So many incredibly brave physicians from there. But then we've got the Weston A. Price Foundation, CHD, the Brownstone Institute. We've got MAHA Action and MAHA Institute, the Autism Action Coalition, Citizens Council for Health Freedom. Oh my goodness, now I'm starting to get down. I know there's so many.
That's okay. That was pretty good.
We've got so many different groups involved, and we've just signed up. Dr. Mary Talley Bowden wants to be involved. Warner Mendenhall of Freedom Council wants to be involved. And there was someone else in the last 24 hours who reached out that wants to be involved, and now it's slipping my mind. I'm sorry.
So when you have coalitions like this, when you get this many people together, it's so critical. Singleness of focus and purpose. There's otherwise it's just going to fall apart, right? So we're all together for one thing and one thing only, and that is to get states to pass the Model Medical Freedom Act in their state. There are some states that are already moving with this, that are already doing this. Can you comment on any of that right now? I know we're being sensitive about what information we put out in front as we're trying to make things happen and such.
Sure. So let me just say that I've seen so many coalitions fall apart. I've seen so many coalitions never work. And so I was very, very clear when this started formulating in my mind that we would be singularly focused on this one issue. And that's it, because we don't want to step on any organization's toes. We want everybody to be resolute in their commitment to the foundational principle that we oppose all medical mandates, period, and that we're going to further this legislation to the, led by Stand for Health Freedom, because they're a 501c4, we're a 501c3. So they've got state directors in 41 states across the country, and they've got partners or boots on the ground already in those states as well. And so we've got about 10 states that are interested in introducing it. It's already been introduced in Indiana. We are not going to say what other states are introducing it yet until they actually introduce the bill. Once that happens, then we'll be making formal announcements, but we don't, there's just no point in announcing that right now. But I've even heard, I will say this, that a province in Canada is going to introduce the bill. So I think that, what happened last year with getting this bill passed in Idaho was that we breached the dam for the first time. Yes. We basically showed that actually it could be done. And I was just astonished during the time when I was presenting the bill and standing for questions in the legislative committees that how many people supported us. There were legislators arguing on our behalf. And I thought that was really interesting. And as I've met with more and more people, so many people have a COVID story or a COVID shot story. And it affected their children, their grandchildren, their brothers, their sisters, themselves. Way more people than we realize. And so they were far more open and supportive of us than I had anticipated. And that's fantastic, right? Now what we need to do is freaking burst the dam open. And that is what this year is all about. Bursting the dam open in the states where we think it's most likely that it can happen first.
Yeah. Dr. Kat Lindley, you are with IMA, the Independent Medical Alliance. Why don't you talk to us about your perspective, your organization's perspective on this concept of no medical mandates? There are a lot of doctors out there gripping their pearls, even thinking about hearing such a thing, especially here in the United States. But why don't you give us your perspective from a medical perspective on your support for this legislation?
So IMA has about 12,000 physicians and other healthcare professionals, and we are proud to be part of this coalition because, when mandates happened early on, I struggled as someone who actually is a legal immigrant who came from a communist country. This whole idea that a country free as the United States will have a mandate for people to get something they don't want. And then seeing Idaho pass this bill really meant a lot because patients should have a choice. And during this pandemic, patients actually have been robbed of informed consent. No one has given them informed consent of what they're doing. They just said, you have to do it. You have to do it to have a job. You have to do it to go to school. And this idea that we all have to do something, it's not how we do it in medicine. Medicine is very individualized. You need to look at the patient. Some patients cannot get certain products, but many states actually said that there were no exemptions. You have to do it. Kids, young adults couldn't go to college unless they did something. So IMA is standing with the rest of our coalition partners to kind of give a hand from the scientific standpoint and also from a patient advocacy perspective. We have a patient bill of rights because we feel that every patient should be able to go to their doctor's office. And, as a doctor, I'm supposed to give you advice. I'm not supposed to tell you, you have to do this no matter what. You should hopefully take my advice because it comes from, scientific background, from knowledge of what you need. But the idea that you have to do something just because the states tell you someone, the government tells us we have to do something, or for us to have to introduce a foreign substance into patients just because you have to, right? I don't think it's the way that we practice medicine, and it's not something that patients should even have to worry about. As I said, this idea of informed consent has been lost. And to restore trust in medicine, you have to have doctors and other healthcare professionals who have these candid conversations with our patients. So, we're standing behind this because every state should pass this bill to make sure that we protect the patient.
That is just fantastic and a really powerful statement. You brought up that you came as an immigrant legally to this country. You had come from a communist nation. Recently, it was sent to me, and please, Leslie or Dr. Lindley, correct me if I'm wrong, but that both Russia and China have more freedom when it comes to choice in vaccine than the United States of America does. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And you know what? We're all our own ex, right? So I posted something regarding this idea of medical freedom and patients having choice, regarding the childhood vaccine. And then one pediatrician said, I believe it was Dr. Hotes, that says, no one is making anyone do anything. We don't give mandates in our offices. And my reply was, well, if you are telling patients they cannot be seen anymore because they don't want to get vaccines, that means that, yes, you are giving them ultimatums. So yeah, the countries like, Russia and China, who are communist country where you would expect them to actually tell their people, you have to do this, don't do it, but we do. And it's really a hard concept for me, and again, I'm going to go back to that, someone who came from communism comes to this country that's free, where you have a choice, where we just said, no, you have no choice, you have to do it. And in California, they're still doing it, right? They don't even take exemptions. So it's just a crazy world.
Yeah, I'm from New York, and we have the same thing. They got rid of the religious exemption to vaccination in 2019, so kids can't attend school unless they are complying. The medical exemption is under fire here as well too. It's truly remarkable and astounding. It's also interesting to see this shock that is coming from the medical establishment over the idea of shared decision making. I mean, I assumed every single medical intervention that existed was shared decision making between me and my doctor, between the doctor and me as a parent for my child. Even though I've been in this for many, many years, that was a shock to me to learn that no, these codified mandates go beyond the individual, beyond the parent, and that the doctor is sitting there is like, no, I must do this, that your decision doesn't matter. And I'm surprised that the mainstream is fighting this concept. I think they sound crazy. I think they really sound crazy to say the patient or the parent shouldn't share in the process of the decision making. But unfortunately, we're in this strange space where 18 or 19 states are actually making these arguments, are actually saying, no, you must get a meningitis shot now. We don't care what the federal government says. It's almost a bizarro world. This almost feels like, I can't believe they even have the audacity to make these arguments. I don't know, Leslie, I don't know if there was a question there, but if there's anything you want to respond to in that, I'd love to hear your opinion.
So I think that, we've had decades of this country in particular being indoctrinated with the idea of ask your doctor, right? Yeah. And you think about when they were recommending that doctors would say, my brand is Camel, right? Always with a white lab coat and a stethoscope around his neck. And what's happened is that there's this image that the doctor is the expert and in some ways a god, a deity that we should bow down to. And I think that Americans need to take back their power and remember that they are the ones who are in control, that the customer is always right and the customer gets to choose, and that you are consulting with a physician, not being told what to do. And this is why I just love what Dr. Lindley is saying, is that it's so important for doctors to remember that they're there to provide their perspective, and you are free to choose whether or not to use it. That's it. And in Russia, what's happening is half of all parents in Russia are choosing not to vaccinate their kids, and they have better health outcomes than in the United States. So there's something going on. And in China, it's a little more stringent, but it's less restrictive than it is in California, New York, and all these other states. HFDF just posted an article about this on our Substack and on our website. And I think that, there's this, I think the pharmaceutical industry and the medical complex is really behind this. They will defend their power at any cost, unfortunately, even at the cost of sacrificing any goodwill that they still have, and at sacrificing the relationship between doctors and patients. And what we're trying to do with the Medical Freedom Act Coalition is to restore the doctor-patient, family-doctor relationship so that parents are the rightful individuals making decisions for their families, for their children, so that adults have the rights to make the choices that they want to make free of coercion. So it's not just the absence of medical mandates from a public, actor, so from the state. It has to also be from the private, and that's why we passed this bill, because it outlaws any mandates, any coercion, and any discrimination on the basis of one's medical choices. And so we just have to get back to this place where everybody understands that it's their right to make their own medical choices, and they just basically release themselves from the shackles of this indoctrination that's been literally foisted upon the American public for how many decades now.
Leslie, you brought up a really important point there about the sanctity of the patient-doctor relationship, and we have totally, completely lost that. You said in Russia, 50% of parents choosing not to vaccinate their kids. I had a Hawaiian councilwoman on my program, I believe last week or the week before, where she had said there's an elementary school in her district where over 40% of the children have religious exemptions there. The religious exemption's under fire in Hawaii. Governor Josh Green has a bill that might move forward where he's trying to get rid of the religious exemption, take away choice. There really has been a backlash post-COVID of, no, I do not trust you. I do not trust my doctor. My doctor kicked me out of my practice, kicked my kids out of my practice. Dr. Lindley, why don't you speak to that a little bit? Speak to this loss of trust that seems so pervasive. I know so many people who say to me, I don't go to the doctor, right? But no, that's a dangerous place for me. Dr. Lindley, why don't you speak to this?
So that's exactly right. During the pandemic, I think what has happened is this role of doctor has changed, right? Because you had doctors who are like, you have to do this, you have to get the COVID vaccine. And then some patients had side effects. And then they go to the doctor and say, well, I don't really want to get the second one because I wasn't feeling good. Some of them even had like a major event, and they would go to the doctor, and doctor's like, oh no, you have to get your booster. And I think patients are starting to realize that not everything that is said is really true. And patients are starting to question their doctors. It's not only like, a patient goes to Google, they do things. We're just seeing this whole relationship between pharma and medical providers that has really attacked patients' choice. And we lost the whole informed consent. No one, even the initially the COVID vaccine insert had nothing on that piece of paper. So how could everyone say it's safe and effective? But that was the mantra that the medical community went with. It's safe and effective. You have to get it. You have to protect the grandma. You have to protect the society. But what about me? What if I don't feel good? Who am I protecting? So I think, the balance is shifting, which it should be that way. Patient needs to be in charge of their own health. They need to be the driver. We are here as medical community to support them, give them the evidence and say, okay, so you have this and you have that. What would you like? My advice is this is better than that. Let's work on it. And this is why AMA is actually not trusted, but this is why we have Independent Medical Alliance and our professionals, and we are creating trusted network of doctors where we are the ones, as fellows, we have fellows, as you're aware, and I'm director of the fellowship program. We are bringing our friends into this network, people that we would go to, so that patients can truly be in charge of their health. The vaccine schedule has changed. We have the advisory committee that has said we don't need hepatitis B if the mother doesn't have hepatitis B, child doesn't have to get it at birth. You have a choice later on if you feel there's risk and benefits, and that's how it should be. But now you have American, what are they called, Academy of Pediatrics or whatever, who are going to sue the HHS on this because they feel you have to get them. But you have to look at who is sponsoring their society, right? Pfizer is on the top. And it's very difficult. I do have to say, as a physician who has grown into this culture that vaccines are all good, we all need to get them, it takes a shift in our thinking as well. And it's a journey to realize, no, not everything is good. No, patients don't need everything, and we do need to give them a choice. Over the last 10, 20 years, the relationship have shifted where the doctor is kind of on top, and then the patient's like, okay, you tell me to do this, I have to do it. But that's never how it should have been. Patient has always have to be the one that's driving the ship, as I say.
Michael, can I just add something to this? I think it's something that's so important for people to remember. You know, my father-in-law, he died in the hospital during COVID, and they refused to do anything that we asked them to do. They literally, my husband had full power of attorney, medical and everything. They would not give him anything that we asked for. Budesonide, anything. They ignored us. They literally locked us out. They wouldn't let us come and visit. They were horrific. And I also heard, I met a politician recently in Idaho who was in his, probably, I don't know, somewhere in his 40s, probably late 40s at the time, and he developed a heart infection. The hospital system here in Idaho refused to see him. He had a negative test. They were going to let him die.
Was that because he was unvaccinated they wouldn't see him? Or?
No, because they were afraid of opening him up or doing any tests on him to see what was really wrong. And finally, his physician screamed at the hospital system and said, you know, you've got to do this. You've got to help him. And then it happened. So my point is, my father-in-law didn't have the COVID shot. They put a yellow card, a card with a yellow star on his door jamb to denote that he had not had the shot. My point is, there was serious evil. And I am terrified about going to the doctor or going to a hospital. And I think rightly so. Many Americans feel like this, and it's going to take a heck of a lot of energy for the medical system to regain any trust because they destroyed it over the past 5 years.
Leslie.
It's not just the shot, is my point, you know, bad as it
is. I understand for sure. What do people do now, right? So they've heard, we've talked about a lot. What should people out there that are following CHD, IMA, Health Freedom Defense Fund, stands for health freedom, they clearly, all of the medical freedom giants, bar a couple, they'll be there eventually, are in this coalition, right? We're all here. So it screams credibility. It screams like this is the place to be. What should the average person do right now if they want to learn more about this effort, if they want to get involved, if they want to do so? Because at the end of the day, we know they're the ones, you watching this, you're the ones who can make this happen. We can only really set it up, but we need people out there. Tell people what they can do, what they should do, Leslie.
Yeah, let me just say that the pivotal factor in Idaho was the people. Thousands and thousands of people kept calling and emailing and bugging the governor's office to the point that they were overwhelmed and, dare I say, quite frustrated. And you know, when they're frustrated, you are actually moving the ball down the field. So that's a really good thing. And so what people can do is HFDF and Stand for Health Freedom both put out a press release. I believe IMA put out a press release. Go to our websites, look at our press release, learn about that. You'll see what on our press release, it says what all the other organizations were that were originally signed on. You can follow all of us and see what we're doing in the individual states. And we're going to be making announcements about this so that people can then, if you live in this state, you can get involved. You should check in your local state, wherever you live, see whether or not you have a medical freedom or health freedom grassroots group and join, because this is how we're making a difference. We have much more impact on the local level, at the state level, and people need to remember that health laws are state laws. CDC is only allowed to make health recommendations, which is why they have a recommended vaccine schedule. It's up to the states to implement their own individual health laws. And so this is the place where we actually hold our representatives' feet to the fire. So you need to get involved. You need to pay attention. You need to sign up for all of our, sign up in your local state. You probably can't sign up for every one of our newsletters, but signing up for some of our newsletters would be really helpful so that you can be in touch. And also follow us on social media, because we'll be posting and we're going to be putting out messages across all these platforms. Also, think about who you really truly are. Are you a slave? Are you, or are you a free, living human being who's empowered and endowed with God-given rights to make your own choices? And I think that we need to flip this whole thing. We don't have to defend or be on the back foot anymore. We need to assert our power and control. I make my choices. I call the shots, period. And I'm not going to tolerate this inversion of the truth anymore.
Fantastic. We're just about out of time for the segment. Leslie Manukian, president of Health Freedom Defense Fund, Dr. Kat Lindy with the Independent Medical Alliance. Thank you both so much for coming on. I'm sure I'm going to have you back very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So one other thing I just want to add, actually, what Leslie just said. Stands for Health Freedom has chapters, I believe, in over 40 states. Check them out. Check out their chapters. They're very actively involved. CHD, we have chapters. At Children's Health Defense, I believe we have somewhere around 25. Check us out. We're about to reveal what our plan is to support these efforts as part of this coalition as well, too. So get involved. This ain't a spectator sport. You can't just be on the bleachers thinking that there's going to be a Medical Freedom Act becoming law in your state. That is not going to happen. So join the organizations, get involved. And thank you all so much for being with us for this entire show. Really good show, really good information. Spread the word, spread it out there to your friends on social media. Let people know about all the work we're doing here at Children's Health Defense. Peace, everybody.
All right, we're live now.
Okay.
So tell us your name, please.
Beth Barnum.
Beth, and this is about your child?
My son, Brett Barnum.
Right. Okay, tell us what happened. Take us back.
So I followed the childhood vaccine schedule, just like I did with my older child. And when he was 3 months old, he got his, 6 vaccines. And I came home and he was screaming and had a fever for 3 days. So I called the doctor, the pediatrician. She said it's normal, but it's probably the DTaP. And we'll continue to vaccinate, but we will separate the DTaP, because at the time you could do that. And so we did. We completely vaccinated him. He was your typical child. He could ride a bike. Well, this is not typical. At 3 years old without training wheels, he climbed everything. Gross and fine motor skills were phenomenal. And then when he turned second grade, we started noticing things like his teacher said he's having trouble reading. He started wetting the bed again. His teacher said he probably needs an IEP. So I said, sure.
Just tell everyone what an IEP is.
Independent Education Program. So he would get pulled out in class to do extra learning. But from the outside, he looked typical. Then he was involved with parkour, so the running and jumping of walls, and he was doing fabulous. And then 2 years into it, he started tripping, and we thought it was a growth spurt. And at this time, so I think this is around SB 276, SB 277 came out, woke me up a little bit, still didn't understand that bill. And so SB 276 came out, and I really got involved, started looking at vaccines, read Suzanne Humphrey's book, Dissolving Illusion, saw the Vaxxed movie. And so I stopped vaccinating my kids, which they were already up to date on everything. But I stopped the flu vaccine. Then my son grew. He does junior guards here in Oceanside, and I had to buy him in one summer 2 new swimsuit sizes, because he was a tiny, fit little guy, and he swelled up, like his skin was glistening because he was so swollen. And everyone said it's typical because he is going through that spurt where he will go out and then he will go up. But then he had massive gut issues and started having massive anxiety issues. And we were with Kaiser, which is a hospital out here. And the pediatricians wanted to do tests on him, and one of them involved taking the stuff that you give somebody for like a colonoscopy. And I was like, it's like radiator fluid. So I said no. So this is end of 2019. And I had to peel him off of me to take him into school. And we weren't getting any answers. And at this time now, he has a lump in his gut that, again, the doctors can't figure it out. They want to do massive tests, but they're not doing any blood tests. They're not, and I am fighting vaccine legislation at the same time. So we finally go out of network. My husband and I are willing to pay out of pocket to go see a functional medicine specialist. She does blood tests. I pull him out of school on March 19th, which was his last day of public school, because on March 16th, the lockdown occurred. And he was diagnosed with PANDAS, which I knew nothing about. I knew autism, but I really didn't know vaccine injury. That's not why I was fighting vaccine legislation. I just knew that it wasn't right to shut kids out of school if they didn't want to be vaccinated. So this functional medicine specialist said, don't go online, just do the protocol. So he had a strep infection of the gut, which caused brain inflammation, and she's pretty certain that it started when he was 3 months old and he was diagnosed at the age of 12. So it explains, she nailed everything, regressive, the education learning disabilities, the functional fine and gross motor skills that started to go away, and then the gut issues. And mind you, I was not feeding him the perfect stuff. I did not know. So she put him on a protocol of a month's worth of antibiotics. As much as we did not want to do that, it was the only way to clear up the strep infection, to hopefully.
Was that what the lump was?
Yeah, that's what we think. I guess, but the lump went away in like 2 months. The lump was gone. He was having less issues with the gut. Like, to go to school was just a massive issue because of the gut, because he was in the bathroom all the time, and he wasn't feeling good. So we did the protocols of I think he was on 15 to 20 supplements, gluten-free. And this is all hardcore, like just taking it all away from a kid who's in a typical school, and you get all this food, even though the lockdown had occurred, but we didn't really lock down. We were still meeting with friends. We did dairy-free. Doing the supplements was not easy, but he started getting better. And then fall of 2020 rolls around, and I see that they're masking kids, so I pull him out of public school and I homeschool him. And there's a lot of people here that were at this gathering today and that were part of my tribe fighting SB 276, and they helped my journey, getting him healthier, getting him homeschooled. And we've tried a lot of different protocols. We are currently with Dr. Stanton Tom, who is with Future Generations. He is a chiropractor that he put on the Heart of Freedom event that had Del Bigtree here in I think it was winter of 2020. And Dr. Stan is a chiropractor, but it's not your typical chiropractor. And I didn't know anything about the vagus nerve, and this was 1.5 years ago. And my son, I'm thinking, everyone looks at him, he's fine, but you don't know what goes on at home. And so I took him into Dr. Stan's office 1.5 years ago, and he barely touched his vagus nerve. Dr. Stan was great. He didn't say anything in front of Brett, but he's like, look, this is how, I barely touched on his, and he said, ouch. And I was like, I don't understand. He's like, it's the highway. It's like the brain highway. And I was like, okay, we're here. I'm going to do the full protocol. So his gross motor skills, not being able to ski anymore, really, and not being able to ride a skateboard and balance. Well, when Dr. Stan put him on, he has 2 scales, he was 60 pounds heavy on one side. So something was off. And Dr. Stan is not, I say expect miracles. He has that doormat, and that's a miracle that's been provided because he is functioning. Even at home, now he knows what to eat and what not to eat. And if he doesn't eat the right stuff, he knows the next day because of how he feels. But it's still a journey. I've been talking to a lot of people out here that have given me some information to still continue the detox protocol, because it's hard with a 16-year-old. He doesn't want to take supplements, and I don't blame him. It's hard enough for me to take supplements and to eat clean all the time. But his journey has been, say, great in a way, because we have a great community, and because of what I wear, I know I personally have affected at least one new grandparent. Their daughter isn't vaccinating their newborn, and there's another person here that she's helping her daughter with her 1-month-old, hoping she doesn't vaccinate. And if I save a child's life or a vaccine injury, then through what my husband and I have learned, that's all we want to do, is just help people going forward. Yeah.
Because you said that beautifully, but also, you know, we want to save the babies, of course we do, but we don't want anyone to feel the utter pain of an injured child. It's very painful. And we were pissed off. I think because I've been fighting Coleman and we've done the Comic-Con stuff, he's like, you go do it. But when 2020 hit, he started getting involved. And then when my son was diagnosed, he was livid, and he still gets upset and he still tears up, which I get. But I'm like, it's that grieving process. I'm at that point where I'm ready to help. My husband's ready to take out whoever is responsible for it, which is the medical industrial complex. So yeah, I don't want anybody to go through what we have gone through. And ours is a mild story, you know, because there's another woman out here and she has twins, and you know, they're fraternal. So one came out fine from a doctor's visit and one did not. And she's nonverbal. And I'm like, I should never complain, but I have a right to complain because my son was a different child when he was younger. He's still walking on his tippy toes, which is a neurological issue, and I don't know how to fix that, but we're going to continue on our journey, and someone will hopefully help with that. And he still has anxiety, but he is functioning, and he's in a homeschool program, and he has friends, and he's learning how to drive. So we're making progress. Wow. But what you're doing also is you're doing an awful lot for all of our children. Outside, I see you out there networking and moving and helping and educating. So thank you for all you do. Any last words?
No, but thank you for what you do. Even my husband said, how long are you going to be here? And I said, all day.
It's all night by the looks of it. Yeah. Okay.
The one small thing I can do. We're bringing awareness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.